Do-rag wisdom, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Y2K20.10.19 with just 15 days to our election. Fake Senate impeachment trial. No vindication, no adjudication, no exoneration. Repeat. The music you hear in the background is an assorted, it's like they have assorted suites from this composer. His name is Ronald Stein. And Ronald Stein did Not of This Earth, The Attack of the Crab Monsters. This is Dementia 13. It's just little suites, different samples of his work. And that's Ronald Stein for you folks in the background. Ladies and gentlemen and friends, we have reached the final 2 weeks before the most important election in our lifetime, where we are literally going to decide if our country is going forward into a stronger democracy or sinks into the slime of totalitarian dictatorships. That would be a waste. Over the final weeks, actually 2 weeks, I intend to give my final arguments for the continuation of our constitutional democratic republic. So this is only part one of this broadcast. I've lived in this flawed and free and unique country for my entire 70-year-plus life. So I promise you, what a so-called normal, quote-unquote, USA looks like. Like the stars of the heaven, we are a country made up of millions of cultures and subcultures. It is a country that has always been at war with itself too. The North American continent was of color before the white race moved in. The North American original people had no knowledge of smallpox, bubonic plague, and cholera until they were invaded by voracious Europeans bent on spreading their religion and sucking out the wealth of the so-called New World. Later, hapless Africans were drafted into the white quest for continental domination, to be enslaved, raped, and murdered. A wonderful example of the nature of the USA life and history is the novella by Robert Louis Stevenson entitled Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. We have reached great heights in our quest toward democracy, but we are also still pulled down by our baser nature, our desire for absolute power, for religious domination, for riches beyond belief, and for racial purity. In the election we have before us, we literally have a choice between democracy and totalitarianism, between Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And we all know what happened to the good and dedicated Dr. Jekyll, a flawed person, when he allowed his Mr. Hyde to come out. Dr. Jekyll was destroyed. The most important thing that we should consider in these last crucial days is the duality of our nature and change it so that the more humane rules. Our country was founded on the blood and bodies of people of color, beginning with the native peoples and continuing with the exploitation and torture of kidnapped Africans. Racism is the Mr. Hyde to our Jekyll in the USA. It fuels much of our fear and much of our violence. I understand why the fictional crew of the Enterprise from the 23rd century would view us as savages if they were visiting us from our future. If we are going to move forward and ensure that a Donald Trump never darkens our door again, we must all lie down on a couch and psychoanalyze the evil racist crap out of ourselves, and then chart ways to change our destructive ways. If we don't, we are going to lose our constitutional democratic republic for something we absolutely do not want, ladies and gentlemen. The first problem going to face us in post-Trump times is the remnants of slime he leaves behind in those hate groups that support him. It is not going to be an easy job to get rid of these creeps, because they were actually made legitimate by the President of the United States in our lifetime. I fear for a civil war more than ever once we eject the crumb, simply because I understand the sociopathic nature of white supremacism. Believe what they say, folks, when they tell you that they will kill you, because they will. We've been crippled by the Trump invasion, and we are going to have to go to rehab big time and put the turd-eating extremists back in the sewers from whence they came. But once we handle that problem, the second is even worse. We not only have a racist problem in our country, but I would also call it a religio-racist problem, and is going to be reflected in our Supreme Court unless the Democrats, if they win big, reform it. The first thing we must go after is the constitutional originalist doctrine, which interprets our Constitution as if we are still living in the 18th century. In addition, we must truly understand what the constitutional meaning of a religious test truly is. Our country must never use a person's religion to decide where they work, where they live, and whether or not they can serve in high positions of our society. However, in our consideration for positions of power to individuals like Aunt Amy Coney, we must also make sure that they understand that any judgments that they make, they cannot allow their personal religious views to taint them. Whether a person is Christian, Jewish, or Muslim, they must honor the secular country in which they serve. They must respect the separation between church, tribal law, and state. If they can't, they should not be allowed to serve. Aunt Amy, for the Supreme Court, I am sorry to say, cannot separate her religious belief from her secular responsibility. She is an extremist fundamentalist in her religion. The same way that a Hasidic Jewish person is an extremist in his religion or her religion, and with the Muslims as well. Aunt Amy is a textualist, an originalist as far as our Constitution is concerned. This makes Aunt Amy nothing more than a totalitarian religious extremist who supports white male rule. For what is originalism after all? It harkens back to a time when this country was ruled by rich white men. Women were not allowed to vote, and black people and people of color were not even considered fully human by our originalist interpretation of the Constitution. White Christianity, with its pale-skinned, blue-eyed Jesus, was essentially our national religion back in those halcyon days, until the founders wisely separated church from secular state. Originalism is a threat to our free republic. The rule of the old days, the time when women knew their place and white men ruled, backed up by bigoted misogyny in the form of fundamentalist religion. If you want to get rid of threats to our republic, you must demand and honor the separation of church and state. You can tolerate religionists up to the point that they do not want to tolerate you. And we have reached that dangerous point of intolerance in our ignorant dismissal of the Supreme Court as merely a third branch of our government, when we know they're co-equal, with co-equal power. Co-equal. Co-equal! And that Supreme Court can be used in an evil fashion, yes, to bring back those good old days of slavery, white man, white rich man rule, forced religious indoctrination, witch burning, lynchings, and the subjugation of women as handmaids to their male rulers. The representatives of these sick values have managed to take advantage of apathetic voter turnout in Y2K16 and placed in power a bullying Trump thug, all in for religious extremist, totalitarian, originalist, racist kind of rule. And this thug has helped to contaminate our courts, supreme down to the lower federal courts, with racist, misogynist originalism with the help of the tainted Senate. Tainted. Originalism represents the devolution of our country and not its evolution. A handmaid's court put the rule of law into the totalitarian hands of extremists. We must repair the wounds already inflicted on us by voting for the Biden-Harris ticket. I understand that they are not angels. They are not perfect. But the alternative is filthy slime. I would rather have the almost perfect angels instead.